like to call to order the special meeting and community forum of the South Burlington School District School Board on December 15th, 2025. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. So if we could do that now.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice.
The next item on our agenda is announcements. Does anybody have any announcements? I have a couple quick announcements. The enrollment projections came out, so we should be publishing those shortly. And also, we have a request from our superintendent to change the video rules, like the way that schools and principals and administrators can use video. And so we're going to be talking about that in upcoming meetings. So if you have interest in the community around how video policy works and how video surveillance works in schools, watch our agendas. It might be coming up soon. Any other announcements? The next item on our agenda is to review the agenda. So after this, we have comments from the public, which is a short period where public can comment on any topic, even if it's not on the agenda. After that, we will have a community forum where we will meet the permanent superintendent candidates. And it'll be, I believe, half one candidate, half the other candidate. And during a community forum, the public and the board are allowed to talk to each other back and forth, as long as it's about the superintendent search. After that, there will be a executive session where the school board will talk about superintendent candidates and potentially make a decision about who to choose. And then after the executive session, there's likely to be an action item to authorize the chair to negotiate with the chosen candidate. Any amendments or comments about the agenda? Great. So our next section is comments from the public. There are 3 opportunities for the public to comment. The first, during this section, about any topic, even if it is not warned on the agenda. The second is before the board takes action on an action item, but only on the topic being action. And the third is during community forum, but only on warrant topics. And today is a community forum. The board will not respond to public comments unless this is a specially designated community forum and the comment is on a topic warned on the agenda. You'll be given approximately 3 minutes to comment. Please do not violate anyone's privacy, and official group complaints or grievances cannot be filed during public comment. So do we have any comments from the public?
Hi. Megathon to Starting Green. Bridget Burkhart. All of you already know me, but just for the record, I just want to request that maybe you share the full budget with the community at the January 7th meeting, if that wasn't already planned. I don't think it's really a great way to build trust and transparency with the community if you wait to share it until the night that you're actually going to vote it and warn it. It would be good if folks had a chance to look at it. It just didn't seem, and maybe I'm misinterpreting, it just seems like from the list of things on the website and in talking to Principal Grunling today, because I went to the budget meeting this morning at the middle school, wasn't clear if that's the plan. So I would just like to request that. That's all.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? All right. Well then. All right, then we'll move on to the community forum. And our first candidate is Dr. Joe Clark. And so welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And so I've got a couple questions, and then at any point, if community members have comments or questions, or if the board does, go ahead and raise your hand or make yourself aware, make me aware that you have a question. So first of all, Dr. Clark, would you tell us a bit about yourself and why you're excited about this position?
Yeah, so Joe Clark, this is my 34th year in public education. I retired in the state of Ohio after 33 years of service. I started as a high school English teacher and then moved into administration as a high school assistant principal, a middle school principal, a HR director, superintendent, and then a superintendent. I spent 14 years as a superintendent in Ohio before I retired. And then I applied for this job as the interim superintendent here in South Burlington. And what I've come to find, I kind of knew it going into my interim when I applied to be the interim superintendent, just by doing my research, but having lived in this position for the last 3 months and 3 days, I really find that my skill sets align really closely with what the needs of this district are. I am somebody that is really good at building order out of chaos. Not chaos might be a strong word, but what I found in my time here is that this district, frankly, is lacking in a lot of policies, procedures, formats for how things are supposed to be done. And working with my team, I have every belief that we have the ability to get those things organized. What I found is we have great people here, great people working here, and they are thirsting for leadership. They are looking for somebody to help guide them and to make things orderly. And I think we have the ability to do that. So that's one thing. I think the other thing that is a strength of mine that I think this community needs is communication and trust building and relationship building. I think over the past year or so that some of that has eroded. And I think that my approach to how I interact with people, how I communicate, how I listen, I think has been at this point well received, and I think it will continue to grow as people get to know me more and as I'm more visible around the community.
Thank you. What were your takeaways from today's site visits? And maybe I should rewind for a minute and say that the candidates for the permanent superintendent, they did site visits today. And so Joe, I would like to ask you to reflect on that and what you saw at the schools and both what did you see that was positive and what did you see that was that you were worried about?
I would say that what was really positive is the people here are just fantastic. What I've found is we have really smart, hardworking, compassionate, empathetic employees who are working with our kids. I've found that we have students who are very engaged and who want to do well, who are very, very, I've never seen a student body in my career that is so empathetic towards others, especially those who might have more significant needs. That is really refreshing to me. The other thing I found through my visits around today is that people are really grateful of the change that they've seen over the last 3 months. I heard many people show gratitude for the open communication, for the Wednesday videos, for the newsletter, for letters that I sent them in the mail, all those sorts of things. My concerns, I wouldn't say I wouldn't say that I can't remember the word you used, James. I wouldn't say worried. I would say just another reiteration that I did hear from people that they are hoping to get a little more structure, a little more order, that they are thirsting to get some sort of policies and procedures from the administrative team together to help them with special education, with curricula. For example, I came to find today that our elementary schools are not using the same math program, and that to me is a worry. That's a worry. Our kids at each building should have the same curriculum. So if I move from Chamberlain to Orchard, for example, I know that I have the same background. So that's a concern to me. Facilities are also a worry, quite frankly. I think that they are not, our buildings are not dangerous. They are warm, they are safe, they are dry, but they're not conducive to 21st century education. I think that is something that this community will need to address in the mid-range, right? I don't think we need to be looking to build buildings next year, but I think it needs to be starting to be a discussion over the next couple of years about how might we be able to provide better facilities for our kids and staff, and also do it at a reasonable rate and get the efficiencies of new buildings, right? If you have new buildings, you can save a lot of operating money instead of putting good money into old buildings. You could put good money into programs for kids instead of new boilers and new roofs, those kinds of things.
Another question for you. What role do parents play in the education system?
Parents are vital to the education system, right? Parents are the first teachers of their kids, and we want to have great relationships with our parents. I think that sometimes you will hear educators say things like, well, I wish we had more parent engagement. They will say that, but their behaviors don't always show that they mean that. I think often when we say we want parent engagement, what we mean is we want parents to not question our decisions. We want them to provide us with whatever resources we need. I believe true parent engagement is asking questions of parents and listening to the feedback that they give. As you know, over the last few months, I've gone on, had 30 different meetings where I've asked parents and staff members and students about what can we do better here in the schools. And I think if we gather all that information and take no steps to act on that, first of all, it erodes trust, and it's a waste of everybody's time. So I think parents need to be active participants in the schools. I think that we need to give them feedback. They are not just parents, whole community are owners of the schools, and we're responsible to them to provide them with a great experience for the kids here. So I want parents to be involved. We've started committees that involve parents. I've had lots of my 3Q meetings, my 3 questions. What do you like? What can we do better with parents? And I've heard the gratitude there, right? I had a meeting with all parents of students who have IEPs, and I've heard them say to me, nobody has ever asked for our opinion before. I had a meeting with the parents who form our multi-language committee. And I heard them say, nobody has ever asked us before what our experience is like. So I think it's vital that we continue to do that.
Another question for you is, if you could describe what's going on in Vermont around redistricting and what attitude you think would be good for the district to have towards redistricting.
That's the first part of that again.
Could you describe just what's going on?
Yeah, right. So Act 73 proposes to limit the number of school districts in the state. I think they want them to be between 4,000 and 6,000 students to consolidate wherever possible. I think the general attitude among a lot of people that I've spoken with is either fear or tentativeness about that. I think in theory, people like the idea of being able to save money. In practice, I think a lot of people don't know if doing that will actually save money. And it also scares them a little bit.
That's you.
Must have said something sounded
Say
like
your
Siri.
dial them.
Anyway,
She sounded confused.
she did. Sorry about that, Siri. So I think that people are very romantic about their school districts. So when you talk about doing consolidation, there may be people that think, boy, I wish I had more resources for my students. However, I also like that our town's logo is on the football helmet. You know what I mean? Having been a superintendent in a really small district, I have seen firsthand some of the challenges of providing equal resources to kids in small districts. Things like AP classes and STEM classes and expanded arts and music and all of those things are really hard to do in small districts. Therefore, I think our attitude should be that consolidation is good for that reason. Now, we happen to be a district with about 2,400 kids that we have a lot of offerings for our students. So I would not say that our students are necessarily not benefiting from programs, but there are things that they are lacking in. We don't have enough opportunities for our kids with career and technical education. We might be able to save money if we were to collaborate with other districts on some of the higher cost, lesser needs kinds of things. Think about like alternative education for some of our most needy kids. So I think that our attitude should be one of looking to collaborate and cooperate, whether it makes sense for our district to actually consolidate with another district, I don't know. But I do know that we should look for ways to share resources. That might be some sort of regional development where we can be served by the same, regional service center to help with those kinds of needs.
I have another question for you. There is a lot of concern in the community around academic performance.
Mhm.
And in particular around if we compare ourselves to Massachusetts or to Mississippi, it seems like our schools are getting worse, even though property taxes are up 41% in the last few years. So what do you think is the most important thing that we should look at in the next year to make academic performance start to recover?
If we're talking about the most important thing in the next year, I think we need to do a curriculum audit and an instructional audit where we look to see exactly what is it that we are teaching to our kids. Is it something that is tied to the assessments, and are we instructing it with fidelity and with proper instructional skills? I think having that baseline of knowledge allows us to take the next step, which is to create that order I was talking about these. This is where we're lacking. Therefore, we are going to place resources in aligning our curriculum, both horizontally and vertically. We are going to we're going to invest in making sure we give professional development to our instructors to make sure that they have the necessary skills to meet those ends. I don't doubt at all the skills that our teachers have. I think we have really, really great teaching staff. I keep repeating myself. I just think they need leadership. They need structure. They need order. They need direction. And if we can eventually, I mean, sooner rather than later, have a strategic plan that outlines what our goals are. And then we align our curriculum, make sure our instruction is supported through professional development, and we can get to that end.
Great. And then, last question from the chair here. How do you deal with differences of opinion?
Well, tactfully, right? I think the very first thing to do is make sure you approach every interaction with humility. I think if you go into any interaction thinking that your answer is the right answer, I think that sets you up for failure. I think that we have to seek first to understand rather than being understood. We need to ask questions. We need to get feedback, and just because intelligent people can disagree. So just because somebody disagrees with us shouldn't mean that we toss them aside or toss their opinion aside or don't listen to them. Instead, we need to be curious, right? Instead of judgmental, we need to be curious about why are people thinking the way they're thinking and what can we do to respect their opinions. Ultimately, decisions we make need to be based on research, right? We're a learning institution. We need to have database and research-based decisions. But I think we have to be open to people and not just play lip service, right? I'm a big proponent of using surveys, but if you give a survey and aren't willing to listen to the feedback that's given in the survey, again, you lose trust and you waste time.
Great. So do we have any questions from board members or from community members, maybe online? Anything that we've talked about so far that
Somebody on
could we start with them?
Okay, yeah.
Yes, let's start with the community. And Tim, could you wait for somebody online to go first?
That might freestyle is I mean.
Okay. Go ahead. Online. When Freestein.
Hi, this is Freeman Stein. I'm a resident. I moved to South Burlington last year, and I've been following the conversation. I'm a retired educator, and Superintendent Clark, I'm wondering if you get a little more specific about when you talk about providing professional development for teachers, what that would look like, and if in part of that is some substantial commitment to actually coaching teachers in terms of using best instructional practice.
So I can't get more specific without knowing exactly what the area is, but my philosophy about professional development is it's best when it's job embedded, when it's ongoing, and ideally when it's presented by your own colleagues. So we have people who have a whole lot of education, they've taken a whole lot of classes, and they have a whole lot of skills. So to me, it doesn't make sense to pay somebody to come in from the outside who's going to be here for one day and give a long speech and then leave. It's much better if we have professional development that whenever possible is done by people who are actually already working here in the district, who have the skills, who follow up time after time to make sure that we're getting where we need to be, that we use data to review whether we're being successful, and then we make adjustments as necessary. I mean, the single most important question we should ask every day is, what do we do if students aren't learning? And we should react to that. We should find out what it is that we're not doing. You also asked about coaching. I am a fan of the coaching model. I think when possible, to have teachers have the ability to go into other classrooms to see things that are going on, that just to use our professional educators as professionals, to have them, they are the experts. We should take advantage of them being experts.
Thank you very much for your question.
Good evening. I'm Tim Jarvis, resident. I don't have a question for Dr. Clark, but I just want to provide a very strong endorsement for his candidacy. I've had the pleasure of meeting with Joe one-on-one on a few occasions, and I see him everywhere. I see him at my daughter's concert, I see him at the play, I see him at sporting events. I was on the call that he referenced with parents with IEPs, and it was one of the most powerful community meetings I've ever attended. It was just remarkable that knowing how busy and demanding the superintendent's job is through personal experience. That Joe is finding the energy and the commitment and the motivation to engage so effectively with the community. I love the Wednesday videos and the accompanying newsletter. My daughter was in the play at the high school, and one day when collecting the mail, we had a letter from Joe, from the superintendent thanking her for her participation in the play. This is remarkably effective in terms of generating positive sentiment about the school district in the central office, which has been very sorely lacking, as we know. And I can't believe he's only been here for 3 months, right? So it seems like you've been here for a much longer period of time. And although I know nothing about the other shortlisted candidate for superintendent, I have no doubt that he is a very strong candidate as well. I would like to see Joe be strongly considered for the permanent position, to build upon the momentum that he's already put into motion, and to promote a sense of continuity and solid professionalism that I think we're experiencing right now as a result of his hard work and dedication and commitment over the last 3 months. So I just want to put in a plug.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Could we go to moment and then two? And I just want, we'll do another 8 minutes, so a moment if free. So,
Okay, so a lot of students in the school, they feel frustrated because they aren't involved and they feel like their voice isn't being heard in decisions that affect them. So I was wondering if you have any plans on how you can include students on school-wide decisions.
That's funny, you should ask that, Moment, because you know that Saturday afternoon, while we were sitting here in the retreat, I shot you and Ollie an email saying, listen, everywhere that I've been a superintendent, I've had something called a superintendent advisory council, which is made up of middle school and high school students. And I have not started that yet because my job is temporary. But my intention is, if I were to get this permanent job, I've asked you guys to start considering who would be some students that would be good advocates on that group. And what we do is really the students run it, but the model that I've seen has been that we meet maybe 4 times a year for a couple hours over lunch, and students come in and we talk about these same 3 things. What do you like? What can we do better? And what do you expect out of me? And we get good discussion, and students drive the agenda. And then when we get those ideas, then we try to implement those ideas. So I would love to get that going probably as soon as January.
One more thing. Sure. So you mentioned some concerns about the facilities and the curriculum. I was wondering if you had any ideas on how we could start to fix some of these.
Well, with curriculum, I think, like I said, I think we need to do some sort of audit. I think that, I think we need to step back and see what we have before we try to fix things. Otherwise you end up, fixing things maybe that don't need fixed, or maybe not prioritizing properly. As far as the facilities go, I do know that there was an issue to have new facilities built some time ago, and I have not been here long enough to see what the community's appetite is for creating new facilities. Again, I'm not worried that anybody is in danger of being in our facilities. I just know that they're set up not to be how really current schools are to be set up. So I think that within the next couple of years, we need to have a committee together of community members, of board members who investigate, what is the best plan for us to address our facility needs. And hopefully Vermont will come up with a facility funding system that might be able to help us out with that.
Sure, no rush, no rush.
My name is Barry Young. I'm South Burlington, and I'm a bus driver. And Dr. Joe came down, first superintendent we had that came down to the bus center. Introduced himself, same thing, we just said, what do you need, how can I help? Very outgoing, we had an issue with something that came up within 3 hours, the issue was taken care of. So I went around the bus depot, asked different drivers if they would agree to support, and bus depot, we all are in favor of supporting Joe. And we just appreciate you coming down and introducing yourself and reaching out to us as bus drivers, and we endorse Joe. Dr. Joe, thank you.
Good donut.
Is there anybody else online or in person? Any parting thoughts, Joe? We got about 3 more minutes.
I would, I mean, I said it in the retreat, I have been so impressed with this board and your thoughtfulness. I know that, 6 of you have not been on for more than a year at this point, but I've been so impressed and so grateful, first of all, that you took the chance or the opportunity the risk of bringing me in 3 months ago. And I think we've made really good headway. I think we have good relationships. I think we're doing good work, and I would love to continue getting this place turned around, quite frankly. I think that talk about, we could be the beacon, we should be the beacon in the state of Vermont, and we're not, but we can be. And I think that can happen sooner rather than later. It took me 8 years to do it in my little district in Ohio. I see 3 here. I see a lot of potential. We have great people. We just are thirsting for leadership. I think I can provide that.
Great. Dr. Clark, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for coming. And we're gonna have our next candidate come in a few minutes. So, yep. Thanks, Jordan.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I didn't get it. Which one? The 2 ones that he's asking right now, or the ones, the one that you're on. Not for the 17. To log on for the 7. Oh.
Do you need a different link for you? I can forward it.
Okay.
Want to sit here?
Thank you, Laura.
Oh.
We're
Would
gonna
you like to
sit
sit
over
there
here,
or
actually,
here?
so you're
Either place
facing
is
the,
totally fine.
Oh,
Come join us.
everybody.
yeah, they can see, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, of course.
Welcome. This is Tim, would you pronounce your last name?
Matheny.
Matheny, Tim Matheny. Welcome, thank you for being here.
Yes, absolutely.
So at our community forums, we allow back and forth between the board and the community. And our topic tonight is the permanent superintendent search. Thank you for being candidates. I have a few questions to start. And if community members want to interrupt and add their own questions, they are welcome to do so. So to begin with, would you tell us a bit about yourself and why you're excited for this position?
Should I speak into a microphone?
That thing is pretty good at picking us up.
Okay. And repeat the question again.
Just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're excited about this position.
So I am a 35-year educator. I started teaching just a couple of months after leaving college, with the intent to perhaps eventually go to law school. And the education world really captured my spirit. And I have been a part of being a teacher, principal, New Jersey Department of Education official, superintendent. I've done a lot of really interesting work in education. And all of that, I think, has contributed to my ability to lead a school district. Why I'm here in South Burlington is I'm doing a national search now for my next professional role and looking at a lot of different opportunities, whether it's a school district or leading a nonprofit organization, all related to education. But what intrigued me about South Burlington, I think, is alignment between the value placed on education in this community, the hopes that you have for your students like Allie and Momin, and all of the students here, but also the desire for continuous improvement, or for being focused on continuing to be ambitious for even better student outcomes. So I think there's that alignment between your hopes and dreams as a school district and what I think are my greatest attributes as an educational leader. I think there's a pretty good match there.
Thank you. Oh, today the candidates did some site visits. And so I would just, what were your takeaways from today's site visits? What did you see that was positive and what worried you?
Nothing worried me, other than my ability to walk on slightly slippery sidewalks at times. But I think I'm okay there. I think what I saw that made me really pleased is one term from the world of organizational wellness is psychological safety. And it can apply to the adults who work in an organization like a school district, and it can apply to students. What I saw was a great deal of psychological safety in the schools here in South Burlington. I think I have a sixth sense because I've been around kids for my entire career. When they feel unsafe, whether it's physically, emotionally, intellectually, I didn't sense any of that. I felt kids feeling like they were well cared for, that their emotional needs were well met by the educators in the district. So I was really pleased to see, and honestly, that's something I was looking for, because that is a necessary condition in order for students to achieve at high levels. It's not everything you need to do, but it's an essential, necessary condition for students to do great things academically and in other ways that we would hope for them in our schools. Thank you.
What role do parents play in the education system?
As I wrote maybe a few months ago, parents are the number one partner, and I would say caregivers in general, because we know that some of our kids are raised by different people in their family. They are our essential partners. And one thing that I was insistent on as a superintendent is ensuring that we are gesturing parents into the schools and into partnership with the school district in terms of the lives of kids and they never get the stop sign. There may be times when we have disagreements with parents, but that always takes place in the context of knowing what the shared mutual interest of the relationship is, and that is extraordinary learning outcomes for kids. When we have common values around that, we can navigate differences that we might have from time to time. But at the end of the day, nearly universally, we can come to agreement around shared values about what's right for kids.
Thank you. Another question. Can you describe what's going on with redistricting in Vermont? And what do you think our attitude about it should be?
So even though I wasn't in Maine at the time, I know the history of the regionalization of school districts in Maine. And that has created an alphabet maze of school districts in Maine, RSUs and AOSs and so forth. And I appreciate whether it's Maine or it's Vermont's interest in trying to use the dollars of taxpayers in Vermont most efficiently when providing for a high quality education for students. I get that. And I think there is a great challenge when we have small school districts that require a considerable amount of resources in order to provide adequate educational opportunities. I think the regionalization urge should have a different impact when you're talking about school districts located in a metropolitan area. It's really a different issue. Are there opportunities for shared services, for example, between school districts and municipalities and other school districts in order to decrease costs? You know, one thing that we did in South Portland is that we were part of a purchasing collaborative where we made joint purchases of things like technology and supplies. Multiple school districts, it's called the Sebago Alliance, which increased our purchasing power and decreased the costs to all the districts who were a part of that. That's, I think, an important, and I would guess something to that effect goes on here. But that can help mitigate some of the impacts of costs on smaller districts. Now in Maine, this district isn't a smaller district. So conversations around regionalization and redistricting should look really different here.
Another question. There's a lot of concern in the community here in South Burlington around academic performance. For example, if we compare ourselves to Massachusetts or Mississippi, it seems that our schools are getting worse. Even though property taxes are up. And so what is something that we can focus on in the next year to make academics improve?
So the number one in-school factor contributing to student learning outcomes is the effectiveness of the classroom teacher. Number one, year in, year out, research study after research study, the effect size of teacher effectiveness is far beyond any other in-school factors that shape student achievement. So ensuring that professional learning for teachers is focused on research-based approaches to instruction is the very first lever that any school district should look at. And I had great conversations with many teachers today, and I think they would be really receptive to ensuring that their professional learning is absolutely top-notch as a lever for increasing those student outcome measures that we all hope for them. I would also note, I had a really interesting conversation with a group of high school students. I requested a meeting with high school students today, even though it was an original part of my calendar. And I think even high school students are saying you know, more could be asked of us academically. And an initial step to that, I think, is looking at the panorama survey results from the high school about how high school students are feeling about the rigor of their education, and talking to recent graduates of the school system to determine how well prepared that they think they are for college or careers. And having that data and knowing how the educational approach in South Burlington could be better aligned to those really positive learning outcomes, meaning where we want students to be is, I can hit the ground running when I go to college, or I can hit the ground running when I enter into a skilled trade. I am well prepared for those outcomes, listening to them, and at the same time, continuing to build the capacity of teachers to do great work are two strategies that would go to.
Thank you very much.
Do I see correctly that your budget in the South Portland schools is roughly $70 million?
Yes, that's the last budget I oversaw there.
So similar size to our budget here in South Burlington, which is great. I'm curious, can you talk to me about your budget process in South Portland and how you conducted the budget process to achieve, you know, the goals and the ambitions of the district at a reasonable cost to taxpayers? How did you generate the budget every year? What was your process or the cost control mechanisms?
Sure. So one important point I would start with is the reality that the cost drivers in school districts are often fixed costs. And your ability to manage cost drivers that are not fixed costs is really, it's a small part of the budget comparatively speaking. So 80% of most school district budgets are the people who work for us. And many of those wages and salaries are driven by collective bargaining agreements. So we can forecast 2 or 3 years down the road what our costs are going to be. And then of course, the other big question mark are healthcare costs, which are out of the, you can reduce coverage for employees and save costs that way, but that's often a cost that's out of your control because again, the plans are fixed in collective bargaining. So that being said, knowing that you start the budget season having a pretty good idea of what your cost drivers are and what's outside of your control. So then you turn to, you do projections based on that. And then you turn to what you do have control over, which is the number of staff members, your discretionary spending, you know, which might be about 20% of your budget. What I like to do and what I saw the board do is in your November meeting where you set a 3.4% increase as the ceiling, is to backtrack from an expectation of the board to manage costs under that ceiling. So in South Portland last year, we were looking at, I sensed the board wanted to stay within a 5 or 5.5% increase. And that's what I guided our leadership team in looking to as the ceiling. And then we began meetings internally with principals, directors, other key staff members around their individual portions of the budget. We set some general guidelines, you know, what they could expect underneath what I set as what I thought was a ceiling. Our board was not as clear as you were when you said that 3.4% increase, but I had a pretty good idea. And then, you know, you're managing costs under that ceiling that whether it's the board or I, as superintendent, was setting for them. And of course, you know, our natural inclination as humans is we want to do new things. We want to start new initiatives. We want to buy new equipment. But setting limitations individually with each key department lead, and eventually through that collaboration with the principals and department leads, is arriving at a tentative budget. And then we began to vet that budget with individual board members. We didn't meet in the initial phases around that kind of draft budget. We met individually to get board members' opinions on some of the things we were thinking about. Ultimately, then, after vetting the proposed budget with both the administrative team and some individual conversations with the board, then we were ready to move forward with the public budget. So our timeline is different in Maine. Our timeline really right now is when Maine school districts are doing kind of preliminary work because the voters don't get it in their hands until June. Yep.
Do we have any questions from the community online?
Visual justice also. No, no one online, James.
No, online. Sure, here's another one from the chair. How do you deal with differences of opinion?
I do not claim to have all the knowledge and all the truth in the world. So when there are differences of opinion, the place to start is to listen. And I would hope that in my work with the board and work with the leadership team of the district, there is honesty, there's directness, and there's kindness in those interactions. Presuming that people have positive intentions with their opinion and setting the tone for positive intentions. But listening first, asking for evidence if, opinions still differ. And at times saying, yes, you're right. I hadn't thought about that. And my opinion has changed. There are other times when you listen, you review the evidence and say, no, I have looked into that issue and this is clearly the direction that we need to go as a school district. There aren't many times if a superintendent is doing his or her job correctly, you shouldn't need to say, at this point in time, I'm the superintendent, this is my decision. You shouldn't need to do that because you have used evidence, you've used civil discussion to lead people to a similar conclusion.
Yeah, a lot of students feel frustrated that a lot of the decisions made aren't, that their voice isn't heard, and they feel like that their voice should be included in decisions made that impact them. So I was wondering what you plan, if you get the job, what you would plan to do to include student voice in their opinions and the decisions made.
So we had 2 student reps on the board in South Portland, and I relied on their connection to students' opinions, and I would want you in your role as student reps, but additional student leaders from the high school and even the middle school to feel like they could reach out to me and say, hey, we'd love for you to come over and meet with a group of students who have some concerns right now. And I would walk across the street and have that meeting. That is not a burdensome request. I would also be proactive. I would love to see something like, and I don't know what the composition would be at this point, a superintendent's advisory group of students. I'm a former high school principal. I loved being a high school principal. I'm not looking to be a high school principal again. I love the work of a superintendent, but that's just one of the best parts of my job is having conversations with students about their futures and what they think should be the future of their school. So you would not get stiff-armed by me if you say, hey, Mr. Matheny, we want to have a conversation about this topic. I also think it would be incumbent upon me to be proactive and say, Allie and Moment, this is something I'm thinking about. There are implications for students about this. How do you think this would play out? And I did that with the 2 student reps in South Portland prior to the budget becoming public, the budget proposal, and I told them the rationale. As it turned out, they had pretty different opinions about the budget than I did. That one thing I'm proud of is the fact that that didn't hurt our personal relationship. In fact, one of them graduated and I had coffee with him before he headed out to Tufts. And that's a relationship I really value. So we can have disagreements, but we have to spend time face to face to work them out.
Any other comments or, oh, please go ahead. Oh, from, yeah, it's okay.
Hi, I'm Mark Gable. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming. It's very impressive. It sounds to me like going from South Portland to South Burlington is somewhat of a lateral move for you. Would you mind sharing with us what has brought you to the point that you decided it's time to leave South Portland?
Sure. And I would take you back to, and some of you have heard this already, February of 2024. A 2023 graduate of South Portland High School died by suicide. That spring break, a ninth grader in South Portland took his life. On July 4th, the son of a staff member in our district office took his life. And in August, another young man who was a rising ninth grader took his life. I know two of the mothers of those young men personally. In the midst of those tragedies, we decided as a school district to create a director of mental and behavioral health position. And we know every district in the country has been affected by the lingering mental health impacts of the pandemic. I also think social media use is harming our young people in terms of their mental health. So we created this position. She started in September. When we started a difficult budget process, I presented a budget that maintained that position. She had only been in the job for about 8 months, 7 months. And we were beginning to make strides. For example, universal screening around mental health is something that I would look to wherever I work next. And we were beginning to pilot that, beginning to implement it. The board, against my judgment, decided to eliminate that position, despite the fact that we were a suicide cluster. That deeply conflicted with my personal values as a human being and as an educational leader. And at that point, I had hoped to spend many years in South Portland. But when you realize that you differ from the board in such a profound way that affected the mental health, I think, of the young people in the community, it was time for me to leave. And I resigned. And I wish that district the best, and I have so many wonderful friends in that community, but it wasn't a fit for me any longer. So I began to look at other communities that were going to be a better fit for me. And I hope that South Burlington is that community. I believe I've learned a lot in 4 years as a superintendent, and I can bring it to bear here.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing that story with us. Secondly, I'm so sorry you went through that 4 times. And thirdly, you gotta love a guy who stands up for his values and walks away with his time.
I did, so, and I don't regret that decision. I never have.
You shouldn't. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board or from the community? Well, great, we got started a little bit early this evening, so I think that we will wrap it up there, and thank you very much.
Yes, of course.
For coming out and
Thank you for
answering our
coming.
questions. So,
Very good.
thank you very much. And we will we'll take a quick break and then we'll be right back to kick off an executive session. So maybe take a couple
5
minute break.
minutes.
5 minute break. Yeah.
Everybody at this point, then coming next.
So Seamus, we did.
All right, the next item on our agenda is a projected executive session. The topics for this executive session are employment of a public officer, employee, superintendent. And we actually do not have our attorney here today, so we won't be receiving confidential attorney-client communication. So we will, in this executive session, we will only be talking about employment of the superintendent, and we are likely to be joined by both superintendent candidates and potentially our HR director if we ask her to come in. So at this time, I don't think this is one of the kinds of, we don't need to say that this would premature knowledge would harm the district. I don't think we need to say that for this kind of executive session. So I would.
It is a personnel.
Hmm?
But it is a personnel. Which is why we're doing it.
Yeah. So it's definitely still covered. I'm just saying we don't have to do the 2-step. We only do the 1-step. So I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
Sure. I'll second.
Okay, so Laura moves, Jen seconds, any discussion? All those in favor? All right, we're in executive session.
Okay, you are back on.
All right, I'll call back to order the December 15th special meeting of the South Burlington School Board. We just got out of executive session discussing employment of a public officer. And we were joined by the 2 candidates. The next item on the agenda is an action item. And the action item is designed to allow the district to now negotiate with the candidate or candidates. So I would entertain a motion to authorize the school board chair to negotiate with the chosen candidate.
Sorry, a motion.
Jen moves,
Second.
Austin seconds. Any discussion? And this is where we will take public comment if there's any public comment in the room.
Or online.
Or online.
No one online.
No one online, okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Did you vote on?
Yeah.
Oh. All right, the motion passes. And the next item on our agenda is adjournment. I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Michelle moves,
I'll second.
Jen seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.